Hello traders, Vinny coming to you from theclosingprint.com on December the 15th, 2019. In this edition of your weekend video newsletter, we'll discuss the indices, both US and international, all of which moved higher last week. The US and China arriving at a deal that they could sign as part of Phase 1. Saw many of the Asia ETFs move higher last week, in addition to what we saw in many of the European and South American country ETFs. All of the FANG stocks moved higher with the exception of Facebook, Amazon, and Netflix on the week, with major gains in Tesla and Nvidia. In addition, Apple fared fairly well, most people expecting these chip companies to do well as China tensions subside. We had the bond stock ratio and HYG and junk bullish last week with 10 days to go before the holiday. Sentiment via tick cumulative on a 60-minute turned higher last week late on Monday and continues to trend higher into the close on Friday. All of our breadth cycles are bullish, while NYHL signaled a bullish spike in the number of new highs, and we saw the New York Stock Exchange advance decline moving higher and above the red zone to start this week of trading. Put call ratio is neutral. We saw the bullish percent rising a bit. The one caveat this week is SKEW, which bolted to 144.51. Anything above 135 is considered hedging by institutions, so we'll keep an eye on that as the markets continue to break out. Currencies backed off. The US dollar finally moved back below the 200-period moving average. The yen pulled back below the 200-day as well. The Nikkei is bullish, and the British pound US dollar pair also showing a bullish pop. Regardless, the FTSE and the London Stock Exchange broke out last week on election results. Bonds continue to show distribution patterns at highs. We had the 10-year yield bullish for equities, continues to push higher. Commodities, gold has creeped back up to the upper part of a 16-week descending channel, showing potential for a breakout. The safety trade might start to come into play. As we saw SKEW moving higher, gold might also be something you want to keep an eye on in the short term. Copper did pop. That's telling us the economy is doing well. Construction and home building related stocks should move higher. West Texas crude also 7 weeks above the 20-period moving average on the weekly time frame, looking very strong coming into this week. That is a bullish correlation to equities. The heat map is neutral. We did see strength again in healthcare, mining stocks, and some energy, oil, and gas equipment makers, which did make a big move last week. We'll look at some IBD 50 names. We've got an extensive list this week that we'll cover. And also, the MarketSmith Relative Strength Blue Dot Scan produced quite a few candidates for the week ahead. In addition to the top 20 volume percent gainers last week, we have 6 names from that group, all looking very strong. Bulkowski's showing 505 green with a CPI signal green since December the 4th at 92%. Which is bullish, with 11 bearish patterns, 22 bullish patterns, and 182 patterns waiting for breakout. Starting off this week with the Arca Institutional Index, the 75 stocks most commonly held in institutions' core portfolios. Many of the names that you're familiar with trading, I'm sure. XII has moved higher. Note we are producing blue and green elder sticks. We are between standard deviation 1, the dark bands, and the outer standard deviation 2 bands. The rule of thumb here is we want to stay long as we continue to trend inside of these 2 standard deviation bands. And this is also telling us that institutions are buying, not selling, with increasing pressure for the Bollinger Bands apparently to be opening up even wider, which would suggest an imminent fast move higher if these bands continue to expand. In addition, the spiders are back on a buy signal. This is the Renko chart. This removes time from the equation. Only price action will affect the trend here. The trend is up. The cycle is bullish, as you can see in the bottom panel, beginning the last full week of trading before the holidays. There is a possibility we could pull back a little bit. You can see RSI started to taper off at the end of the day on Friday when we produced this spinning top. 1618 extension from this breakout zone up to that 315.48 level gives us a 1618 extension at 323.25 as a potential target. Volume did increase and MACD is bullish and crossed over last week. The NASDAQ 100 continues to rally off of the October low where we saw this big wick. Buyers stepped up the previous 2 weeks at the lows of the week, continue to propel price action higher. RSI is now starting to get a little bit overheated, so we need to watch for any signs of retreat. Presently, MACD is above its signal line and rising, and volume did increase over the previous week. IWM is also very strong. The Russell 2000 and small caps continue to thrust higher. Note the candles are starting to reduce in size, so we're watching for any sort of signal that we could pull back a little bit before rising back to our target at 170.69. Volume was above average, while MACD remains above its signal line and rising, showing it is the bulls' momentum to lose going into this next week of trading. This is all happening, of course, as the New York Stock Exchange of more than 3,000 stocks showed a big spike in the number of new highs versus new lows in the NYHL. We got a 136% increase from Friday. 264 stocks made new highs versus those that were making new lows. The NYAD advanced decline did peak on Friday, so we appear to be taking a little bit of a respite towards the end of the day. Green elder sticks continue to perpetuate in this chart, so worst case scenario, if we're looking for any kind of pullback, we'd want to see a blue stick or a red stick on Monday, Tuesday. So be aware of that going into this week of trading. If we see any sort of pullback, we'll be first to alert you to that condition. Depending on how the day opens on Monday, we do have a green condition on the VIX indicator. This is flipped on its head so that it correlates with price action. Green is bullish, red is bearish. We're green, we're looking for higher highs and higher lows going into the week to start Monday trading. As this fear indicator dropped further on Friday, nearing the red zone again as traders and investors become more complacent. Of course, there is a condition where breadth is improving. We did see this cycle that we pointed out last week, now in a full bullish swing to the upside. We also see that in the NYSI summation index. As this indicator tends to give us more than a couple of weeks of upside action once we do see a valley and the cycle resumes to the upside. That said, we did see a caveat in SKEW as it spiked higher last week above the 135 zone. You know that is telling you that institutions have begun hedging over the last couple of weeks. Once we made this reversal and followed through to the upside, this is a measure of institutions and traders buying out of the money puts in ever increasing degrees, while the takeaway being that it takes several months of this type of action to give us a clear signal. As you will recall, the move higher in this indicator back in July, August, and September, well before the Fed stated its goal of being very hawkish on the markets. Institutions were hedging and reached a crescendo above the 150, 160 zone before the markets turned lower and funds started unwinding their hedges. Watch this indicator as it's beginning to give us a reason to be more cautious going into all-time highs. Using the New York Stock Exchange Advanced Decline NYAD does sometimes give us a skewed representation of what's really going on with breadth. So we like to break down the S&P 500, S&P Mid-Cap 400, and Small Cap 600 advanced decline percent in each group. You can see that we continue to ramp higher and tilted a little bit lower on Friday. So this is giving us a confirmation that breadth is still improving and not diverging from price action on a cumulative basis, as we can also see in the S&P 1500 composite of those three groups. Continues to be on a buy signal, rising. Histogram bars are confirming, and the S&P 1500 price action is producing green elder sticks, and something that we need to pay close attention to as we continue to make fresh all-time highs. Additional checks like the S&P 500 10-year bond stock ratio give us reason to be more favoring of equities as this ratio continues to drop. The moving average is starting to turn ever so slightly. If that starts to trend lower like it did in 2017 when we started to dip after a flat condition like you see now, that gave us a bullish confirmation, and price action continued to rally higher into all-time highs over the next 3 years. Conversely, the 10-year yield continues to move off of these lows that we saw back in July and August, similar to what we saw back in 2012 and 2016, which gave us a bullish signal for the following 2 years, with momentum indicators clearly bullish and rising. Junk bonds and high yield corporate debt are also giving us a bullish risk on indicator, and bearish if it breaks down, as the markets tend to be led by yields. In any bearish cycle, we'll look for any weakness in the high yield and junk bond markets as a cautionary signal. So that leaves bonds in a position of distribution. We've been looking for that over the last several months as this unwinding of a 12-month trend continues to drift ever lower in the short term, with bonds moving lower and yields moving higher. We also saw the election in the UK have an effect on the British pound US dollar pair, moving higher. Despite that, the FTSE and the London Stock Exchange moved higher last week as they broke back above the 21-day moving average, as they appear to be starting a new bullish trend. With that pair moving higher, the US dollar, of course, been moving lower. It did lose the 200-period moving average, which would be a sign of the safety trade unwinding in the dollar, with the not so obvious impact that commodities moved in the opposite direction. Copper broke out above this volume by price band that we've been watching for the last 8 weeks or so. We finally got above it. This is a leading economic indicator forecasting better things to come for the construction and home building markets. In addition, as the dollar moves lower, we do see gold potentially ready to break out of this 16-week descending channel. If we push above the upper trend line, look for a move above this volume by price band. Anything above 1500, 1510 would signal a breakout and a bullish trade that should last for several weeks. And we see more evidence that traders and fund managers are starting to hedge, look for gold to move higher. West Texas Crude and Brent also moved higher 6 weeks above its 20-week moving average. We're looking for a break back above the $63, $65, $66 a barrel mark. Any move to the upside would be considered bullish for equities, as this has a positive correlation to the equity markets. The sector heat map is about neutral for the S&P 500 spider sectors and the subsector industry groups. We did see strength in oil and equipment, also continued strength in healthcare, while the rest of the sectors take a breather. We had international markets doing very well last week and improving from crimson 3 weeks ago into oranges and yellows and more yellows and lime greens to end last week. suggesting there's money flowing into these international ETFs, as many of you had discussed last week. We also see continued strength in materials, communications, both above their 20-period moving average, technology, industrials back above the 20-day to end the week, consumer discretionary, which should continue to move higher. So watch your retail stocks this week. Healthcare, of course, nice trend. XLP also above its 20 period. XLU is getting back in the game as well. Financials finishing on a doji on Friday. And energy coming from a lagging condition back up to recent highs. Most of the sectors look conducive to higher prices coming into this week, with the exception of real estate, which is lagging the markets. Most of the IBD 50 stocks moved higher last week. We had a big gap up in Adobe off of the 21-day moving average. MACD's crossing, volume increased, and RSI is rising. While we watch for Air Lease to continue this trend, the 9 EMA is above the 21-day. RSI is above 50. MACD is crossing. Looking for a continuation of the trend. Maybe a test of the 9 EMA and then a bounce. Same idea with the Chinese stocks and some of the bigger cap names like Baba, JD.com, IQ, Momo, and Baozun. Baba here continues to move higher. It's trending. Could come back to the 9 EMA. That would be an excellent re-entry if we do see a bounce. RSI is a bit overbought now. Volume increasing and MACD's above its signal line and rising. Align Technology, watching how this hammer develops on Monday. A move back above the 21-day would be very interesting, and a potential setup. If that happens, the RSI would, as a function of price, bounce, of course, and so would MACD. Watch for ALGN to bounce to start the week, as this hammer is telling you there were buyers at the low of the session. Arch Capital, we've traded before. It's been on the watch list several times as we were trending back here in the first couple of quarters of the year. Flattened out in the third quarter, looking for a push higher into December. Volume increasing, price action bullish for 2 days in a row. RSI is above 50, and MACD's crossed and turned higher. Booz Allen Hamilton, looking like it's going to move above this level. Buyers stepped up on Friday. Look for a follow through on Monday. RSI is rising. Like to see it back above 50. MACD is turning as a function of price and volume. It would be nice to see more volume going into the Monday and Tuesday session to consider this one for a trade. CDW, this one looks like it's going to follow through on Monday. Push back above the 21-day 2 weeks ago. Held the 9 EMA on Thursday and Friday. Follows through. A bullish candle on Monday would signal a potential breakout above 138.50. RSI is supportive, and MACD is turning as a function of price. Note standard deviation is starting to turn back up. As price action is near the mean, that is literally telling you that we most likely will see a follow-through. As in previous occasions where standard deviation started to signal that we could push away from the mean further and further as price action accelerates and buyers step up to buy more shares. So watch CDW this week. We're looking for a breakout. Chegg in the education and book printing, ebook services. Nice little pullback over the last 2 weeks to the 21-day. Bullish action right there. More than likely, if we get a bullish day on Monday, we'll be headed right back to 39.73. I really like this kind of setup where we have a pullback first. I don't like buying the breakouts. I like buying the pullback initially, and then once I have a position, as we follow through, I keep adding a breakout above this level here at 39.73 to 40 would be a reason to add to my position again. RSI is rising. MACD would turn as a function of price if we do have a bullish day on Monday, and then we'd look for standard deviation to turn back up. Chipotle, same idea, pull back to the 21-day, buyers stepped up. RSI is above 50 and rising. Most likely this is going to re-attack this level as this group tends to be strong during the holiday shopping season. Copart has been flat for the last week along the 9 EMA, looking for some increase in momentum. Presently, MACD is just drifting lower. Volume was pretty interesting on Thursday. I thought we might see a follow-through on Friday. Didn't happen. Look for a breakout in the short term in CPRT. Fleet Core with a bullish engulfing candle at the 21-day. RSI is turning back up. Looking for this one to follow through. I'd like to see above average volume on Monday, Tuesday for potential follow-through trade going into the week. Fortinet, after a really nice move off the 21-day, consolidated its recent gains for over 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Looks like it's starting to break out. If it does, that would be a nice trade. Looking for a continuation in 2020. We talked about the US dollar moving lower and gold moving higher. Look for Franco-Nevada to break higher. If it does, HDB, this is a India-based bank with over 4,000 branches, I believe, in that country. Banks in general look pretty strong. XLF is above its 20-day and rising. It did have a doji on Friday. Looking for a follow-through, maybe a retest of the 9 EMA, and a lot of these banks, including JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, Morgan Stanley, the big banks in the U.S. This one's probably going to continue higher, maybe a retest first, and then a follow-through. Volume has been pretty decent, and MACD has crossed and is turning higher. Heiko Corp, nice little bullish engulfing candle on Friday. Look for a follow-through day on Monday, Tuesday, back above the 21-day. Most likely would attack this recent high at 134.45. That would be my target. RSI will be above 50. If that does happen as a function of price, MACD is turning and volume is starting to increase. NYMO's been a drag. We really thought this was going to get back above the 21-day and follow through. It just fell off a bit more over the last few trading days. Looking for this one to turn back up, but not holding our breath. JP Morgan, another bank. I know Mr. Flood traded this one last week. Exited, I believe, on Thursday. Looking for this inside bar to forecast a potential follow-through trade in the short term. Banks have been doing well, as we just talked about with HDB. Volume's increasing, MACD's above its signal line, and standard deviation is rising. So it's pretty far away from the mean. Maybe a pullback first, and then buyers step up for potential entry in JP Morgan. L3 Harris, another stock forming a bullish engulfing candle that took out 3 days of last week's price action after the gap up, held the 21-day above the 200-day, RSI is above 50. This has got a pretty good feel to it. More than likely going to follow through and take out 205.44. Draw a trend line through here. You can see that it's breaking trend. If it does follow through with RSI rising this week, volume is above average. And MACD has crossed and turned higher. Leidos Holdings, LDOS, we've had this one mentioned several times over the last few weeks. Pushing away from the 9 EMA, bullish candles. Looks like this is going to break out above 92 this week. RSI is rising. MACD is crossing short term. Probably Monday, Tuesday, if price action does break out. Merck continues its bullish trend, having recently tested the 9 EMA 2 weeks ago. This just continues to rise. It is a bit overbought, so I'm looking for it to pull back a little bit, maybe as an entry, like the one we saw 2 weeks ago. It looks like it's just going to keep going. Measured move on this one is about 8 points or so. So that gives us a target around 94, 95 in the short term after a retest for potential entry. Mercury Systems, it's been many months since we last saw this one on the IBD 50 list. Nice downtrend, looks like it's starting to turn. Price action gets above the 200-day this week. That would set off a lot of prop desks alerts, most likely. RSI is rising, trying to get back above 50. Look for a follow-through Monday, Tuesday. Would be nice attack of these previous highs. That'll probably instigate initial resistance, maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, and then a follow-through after that if it does break above these pivots in the short term, with MACD turning and looking more bullish going into year end. Microsoft, we noted several times last week the increase in RVOL and reason to be watchful on this one. I didn't trade it, but some of you did. Thursday, Friday breakout, 2 nice bullish candles. Look at the volume. MACD is about to cross, telling you that the momentum will most likely continue. Would I chase it up here? Probably not, but it looks like it's going to continue trending nonetheless. So if you are in it, just keep tightening your stops, and we'll look for a re-entry on a retest of the bullish 90MA. Recall that our target is 168. We talked about that several times over the last few weeks. When we discussed base counts on the weekly time frame, we had this first stage base reset. As it undercut this base, became first stage. Second stage base breakout. We took a 20% gain off of this level, which gave us a target initially of about 168 over the next several weeks. So we're well on our way on that directional move. So we got another 14 points to go on Microsoft. Whereas at the same time, we also discussed Apple after this base reset and breakout right around 200, 205 that led to a 75-point move in the sauce. Following through, very strong finish last week. NYMO, another Chinese stock, showing signs that it might get going in the near future. Been stagnant for like 6 weeks above the 200 period moving average. What I'm noticing here are the shadows or wicks on these 4 candles last week. Buyers stepping up at the low of the day. Look for a bullish day. Maybe set some alerts if it does break above 37 to keep an eye on this one. RSI will rise as a function of price, of course, and MACD will cross. Volume picked up this week, so look for a little follow through in some of these Chinese names as that phase 1 deal is now complete. NMIH wick right at the 21-day moving average past 2 days. Looking for a bullish follow-through day. Volume was increasing on Friday and RSI turned back up. NMIH. Another Chinese education and tutoring related stock along with TAL in the same group. EDU looked pretty strong last week. More than likely it's going to follow through. With that phase 1 deal now done, investors will most likely take a little bit more risk on these particular names in the Chinese industry groups. Planet Fitness bolted higher several weeks ago, continued to rally, and last week, the week before, we saw some consolidation of those gains, came back to the 21-day, RSI turning back up. Most likely, Planet Fitness will pop off of this level. If we do see that, volume should increase. If we do see a follow through on Monday and Tuesday, look for a retest of 76 level and then 79.80 in the short term. Thereafter, if buyers do return. Royal Gold, much like Franco-Nevada, a breakout in the gold trade. Most likely we'll see this one break back above the 21-day and break a trend. Connecting the highs here, say above 121, that should do it. That would signal a bullish follow through. RSI would rise and most likely see a lot of these mining stocks follow through. ServiceNow, another stock close to a bullish engulfing candle. Definitely a reversal on Friday. RSI is rising. MACD will cross as a function of price. You can see histogram is already starting to build shorter bars, headed back towards zero. I'd like to see more volume and a follow through on Monday, Tuesday. StoneCo, we've been looking for a follow through. You can see the moving averages are starting to rise. This big white candle here was earnings. We consolidated right along the 9 and 21 day over the following 2 weeks. Now we're looking for a bullish follow through day on Monday into Tuesday, Wednesday. Maybe take out 41.88 over the next week or so. RSI is above 50 and MACD is turning as a function of price. OLED, same idea here. Earnings consolidated, pull back to the 21 day. Now we're back above the 21 day as of Thursday, Friday. Let's see if we can't get a follow through this week. This one could get moving if we start to see some buyers step up. MACD's turning. I'd like to see more volume on any bullish follow through day. Healthcare stocks did well last week. Watching Varian just continues to trend along a very bullish 9 EMA. Hasn't come back to the 21 day since late October. Every time it tests the 9 EMA, it takes off to the upside and follows through. Viva Systems, I saw a number of you mentioning this one on Thursday and Friday. Nice hammer on Thursday, followed through bullish engulfing candle on Friday. Look for Viva Systems to retest 168.65 in the short term. RSI is rising and MACD has headed back towards the zero line. Most likely we'll get a cross over the next couple of days if this does follow through. Watch Viva. I like this one when it gets going. As we saw back here in November, it can rise pretty rapidly from 140 up to 168 in a very short amount of time. Visa, another name a lot of you were all over last week in the trading room, looking for a follow-through, pushing off the 21-day. Nice bullish follow-through day on Friday, breaking above previous pivots. Most likely going to test 186.74 in the short term. Also keep an eye on stocks like MasterCard in the same group, which has already started to break out above its previous pivot level, so watch Visa to do the same. Another new stock on the IBD 50, WEX. Nice follow through on Thursday and Friday. Draw a trend line through these highs, through the bodies of these candles. A breakout above 204, 205 should suggest higher prices and an attack of 52-week highs over the next several weeks. In addition to stocks like Yandex, YNDX, we pointed out early in the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, we started to see elevated RVOL, relative volume during the day. This one took off on Wednesday and hasn't looked back. Friday broke out to new 52-week highs. Looking for it to continue if this momentum perpetuates. We also have a possibility that it could pull back and flag first. That would be the ideal situation because I don't want to chase it here. Just remarking on how strong this group has been over the last several weeks. As many stocks are breaking above the 200-day, we see a 21-day, 200-day cross, and then stocks follow through. Okay, traders, that's going to do it for me. This is Cousin Vinny coming to you from theclosingprint.com on December 15th, 2019 with your weekend video newsletter. I'm going to cut it short today, but do check out some of these names in the bottom under the MarketSmith Growth 250 relative strength blue dot scans. A lot of these stocks look like they're going to follow through, like Rocket, Info, GSX, Diode, DIOD, and CZZ. This is a previous candidate that we had on our watch list several weeks ago that took off to the upside. In addition, look at these stocks that are on the top 20 volume percent gainers last week. These should follow through as well. My kids are in the play A Christmas Carol, so I'm cutting it short so they can go see the Sunday show as well. So we'll send out a watch list around 11:30 tonight and around 8:30 on the West Coast, so be sure to look for that in your inbox. So take care. I hope this helps, and we'll talk to you soon.